Yes, when your back gets better.
I would love it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, Curtis J.MORLEY. Some of you, right? My guest is Curtis J.MORLEY, and your resume is so long that I'd like you to give a quick synopsis of, how you got to write this book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, and we'll go from there. Quick synopsis of how you got here, J.MORLEY, writing this book.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, and started my first venture just out of college, and have started several different companies throughout my life. And it's funny because you talk about the boxing ring, and I think I was stepping into punches for most of my career. I was getting hit in the face too many times, and so the reason I wrote the book is that, and I kind of talk about this story in the very beginning, is I was with a friend in Chicago at Giordano's Pizza, and we're sitting down for some pizza, the big fat kind, the thick crust, and we were talking about starting businesses and this and that, and he said, you know why other people are going out of business and we're still in business? And I'm like, why, Greg? He goes, because I'm just too dumb to do it the normal way. And he said, I've got to figure out a faster, better way because I can't do it the normal way. And the truth is, there is a faster, better way to do business. And even though I've made every single mistake possible in business, that's why I wanted to write this book, was to help people that are starting out, help people that are getting into their first startup or even their second or third startup, and help them understand there is a better way to do business. There is a faster way to do business.
Wow, that's interesting. So how did you come about with the Entrepreneur's Paradox? First of all, I spoke to a very few, what I would say, intelligent people, and I would just ask them, what is paradox? And some of them had a little difficulty breaking down what a paradox is. Can you explain what a paradox is?
Sure, yeah. Paradox is something that seems to be one way, but because of the situation, it's actually another way. And if you look at the cover of my book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, you see a Penrose triangle, which has a little man that looks like he's climbing this mountain. But if you look at it closely, it's actually an optical illusion that if he gets to the top, he's actually coming back down. And so it's the paradox in entrepreneurship is that the very thing that gets people into business, a passion for a product or a service or something that they're the very best in the world at, is what will actively prevent them from succeeding in business. So the thing that gets them in business is the very thing that will prevent them from succeeding in business. And in order to really take things up to the next level, they've got to be able to break free of the paradox, and they've got to be able to take their business to new heights. But that can't happen until they break out of the paradox.
Mm-hmm. I find this show Shark Tank very, very interesting show. I think you can learn a lot of good tips on Shark Tank. I don't know, how do you feel about a show like Shark Tank? Is there things to learn from Shark Tank?
Absolutely. Shark Tank is a great show, and it's super fun to see all the amazing ideas that come out of it. But the thing, if you watch Shark Tank, the thing that they always focus on, they're constantly focusing on, is they're looking at what is the return. If they put an investment in, how long is it going to take to get that investment back? Things like what's their runway? Like how much money do they have in the bank that they can have this runway to get them to where they need to go to profitability. And they take a look at a lot of the metrics that the real world looks at. So if you're looking at an investment group, either venture capital or even a startup fund, then they're going to be asking those exact same questions. If you watch Shark Tank, you'll see that in the real world, they're going to ask you almost the exact same questions. What's your profitability? What's your EBITDA? What's your runway? And they're really gonna look at your business acumen and your business savvy. Yeah, it's a great show. I've watched so many episodes of Shark Tank, and it's super fun to watch.
So now on the other side, there's a show called The Profit, where he comes into businesses that are struggling, and he comes in, looks at the business, and helps them with some ideas and strategy of how to bring the business up and running and successful. What do you say about it in a case like that?
Yeah, actually, my book, The Entrepreneur.
Have you seen The Prophet?
I have, and yeah, I actually heard him speak live, which is fascinating.
Marcus Lemonis?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
He's got some charisma, that guy. He definitely has some charisma. And if you look at it in my book, if you look through the chapters of my book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, that's exactly what this book is about, is people that have already started their business or that are fledgling into their business. And I use this analogy of, a lot of people will go onto Entrepreneur's Island. They'll vacation onto Entrepreneur's Island. They'll, get a side gig or a side hustle, and they'll say, man, that was fun. That was exciting. That was exhilarating. I got to be on this beach for a little bit. I wasn't in the normal world. I wasn't in my day-to-day grind with my boss and all that. And they'll dip their toe in every now and then. And they dip their toe into the island, or, they'll fly over to the island. They'll spend some time, and then they'll fly back and be in the real world again. And sometimes if they do that enough, then they become entrepreneurs and they say, you know what, I actually really like this island. And that's when the adventure begins. And that's what my book is about. If you were to compare the two shows, Shark Tank or The Prophet, my book really is about helping people that have great ideas succeed. And if you look at the statistics, in the first, in the first 3 years, it's 30%. No, yeah, first 3 years, 30%. First 5 years, 50% of businesses, go out of business. And the truth is, I really don't think that's the real number. If I look at it with my experience and with my coaching of entrepreneurs and seeing what's happening, really, the truth is that businesses don't fail, entrepreneurs quit. And that's what's happening. And that's what this book is about. There's really two pieces. If you open up the book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, there's two pieces. There's the business side of things, but then there's the entrepreneur side of things as well. And that's just as important as having the business acumen. So those questions they ask you on Shark Tank, all of those business acumen questions, that's only half the picture. The other half of the picture is the entrepreneur themselves, and getting the entrepreneur to stick through it when it would be really easy to quit. So protecting that asset and taking care of the entrepreneur.
So I guess that goes into my next question. There's Shark Tank. There's The Prophet. Now we have to come up with a new show called The Entrepreneur's Paradox. The new hit entrepreneur show. Now,
fantastic.
What's that show going to look? I know you kind of said it a little bit, but break it down. What's that show going to look like?
Let me think. What would that show look like? Most likely that would look like what I do for helping entrepreneurs, and it's you probably can tell this passion I have. I love to help entrepreneurs. I love to help entrepreneurs succeed in their business and raise them to the next level. And in the book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, there's this analogy. You dip your toe in the island, you go back and forth, then you decide to take residence on the island. And that's where most people stay, is they land on the beach, they're, building sandcastles, they're cooking fish, they're having the greatest time of their life. And then all of a sudden this alligator comes out of the forest. And while they're sitting there on the beach, they look behind them and there's an alligator on the beach. And they're like, wait a minute, he's coming after my food and all my good stuff. I got to wrestle this alligator. So they jump on the alligator and they start wrestling. And what they start to find is that every single day a new alligator shows up. And what was fun as they, went back and forth from the real world to Entrepreneur's Island, what was fun is now becoming this daily chore of having wrestled these alligators. And it's really easy to forget that your mission is to drain the swamp when you're eye to eye with the alligators. And if you can just get into the swamp, drain the swamp, then the alligator will naturally leave. And so you ask, what would the show The Entrepreneur's Paradox look like? It would most likely go in and see these entrepreneurs that thought they were going for independence, they were going for, this life of freedom that they were going to create themselves. And what they realized is that they've actually created their own gilded cage, that they've
Mm,
themselves with the most maniacal boss of all, and that's me. That's
wow.
themselves. and, and so going into them and helping them realize that there's a better way than wrestling alligators every day. It's draining the swamp. And then once the entrepreneur drains the swamp, then it's really amazing. And this is one of my favorite parts about what I do, is that once the entrepreneur drains the swamp, then they can look beyond the swamp. And what they see is they see three mountain ranges on the island. So if you can picture three different, very distinct mountain ranges. And then once they've drained the swamp, the alligators are out. They're not fighting every day just to survive. Then they can see there's actually great heights that they can achieve. And so the show that we'd call The Entrepreneur's Paradox, it would be about helping them make it past the swamp, picking their mountain range, and then starting on the journey up to finding their own success.
Wow, that's interesting. So, quite a few years ago, I was in Philadelphia. I'm walking down the street, and I see this store. And the name of the store, I believe, was called Franklin Quest.
Oh
So I
yeah.
see the store. I'm like, wow. I go in the store, and it's like a Franklin Quest store. They got like planners and all different things. I remember buying the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, from that store. Franklin Quest later went on to become Franklin Covey.
Yeah.
And I believe you worked with Franklin Covey.
It did, yeah. Yeah.
What was that experience like? What did you learn from that experience? What was it like, and what did you learn?
It was an amazing experience. I'm so grateful for my time at Franklin Covey.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was a huge learning experience because I'd been an entrepreneur most of my life. I'd actually never really worked for big business. And and so I wanted to figure out what people were doing different in big business than entrepreneurs were doing in their day-to-day lives, and see if there was something I could learn there. So I really had two purposes. One was to figure out what was different in big business versus entrepreneurship, and the other was just to learn the principles of Stephen Covey, the Seven Habits, all those. I got to meet Stephen personally several times and work with him, which, yeah, those eyes, that's how I felt too. I was like, holy cow, this is Stephen Covey. This is the Stephen Covey. And one experience which was just mind blowing to me is Seth Godin came. So Seth Godin. He's
Seth Godin.
Seth Godin. He's a thought leader. He writes books about marketing. He's a very prolific author. He came and spoke in Salt Lake, and I got to sit in a room with Stephen Covey and Seth Godin as they had a dialogue together, and I was just like,
Wow.
oh, holy cow, this is like the pinnacle. This is it. This is amazing. But it was such a great experience. I absolutely loved my time at Franklin Covey, and view some of my dearest friends as some of the people that I worked with at Franklin Covey. Scott Miller, Matt Murdock, just some amazing people. Sean Covey, of course, and Chris McChesney. Just some
You're
incredible.
tuned in to GHCR,
uh,
Grant House's Community Radio, home of the Community News Service.
That really shaped my career and helped me in writing this book with Scott Miller, who has actually just also stepped out and is pursuing his own career outside of Franklin Covey as well. But yeah, learning those principles, the seven habits. Actually, at the end of my book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, I list some required reading for every entrepreneur, and one of those for sure is the Seven Habits. But then there's a couple other books that are from Franklin Covey, specifically the Four Disciplines of Execution, Scott Miller's book. Actually, I think I've got it right here. Yeah, there it is. management mess to leadership success.
Wow.
There we go. The 7 habits.
Hey.
This one, absolutely. And the 4 disciplines of execution. Yep.
Oh, okay. Wow. Nice.
Yeah, this is an incredible experience. Such amazing thought leadership.
Yeah. I got my 7 habits over there. It's a little bit out of reach. I'm not going to reach and get it, but it's a little bit out of reach. But it's not far away.
Awesome.
So, entrepreneur's paradox, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to compare that with 7 habits. I want to focus on time. Now, you tell me if I'm wrong about this. It's impossible for any human being to, on the planet, to manage time. Not manage, well, there's no such thing as time management. I'm saying that there's no such thing as, because they're giving courses on time management. I'm saying there's no such thing as time management. Am I wrong?
Nope, you're absolutely right.
I'm right?
You're right.
Wow.
No, you're
so if there's no time management, then how are they giving time management courses?
But because you can't manage time. Time ticks on no matter what. But you can manage you can manage yourself within time.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I believe that's a fallacy.
So there's no time management, there's self-management. So what's some of the key characteristics that an entrepreneur has to have to be a successful entrepreneur when it comes to managing themselves?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I am so glad you asked that question because it's chronic with entrepreneurs that entrepreneurs love to wear all the hats. And in the book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, there's a whole chapter called Wearing All the Hats. And so the entrepreneur wants to be the product manager. They want to be the inventor, the innovator. They want to be the process person. They want to do legal. I don't know why. They want to do accounting. They want to do everything. And part of it comes from a scarcity mentality. And part of it is just that they honestly believe they can do it all. And having come from experience myself of trying to do it all, what the reality is that contracts get signed that have loopholes and accounting practices aren't done properly, and so extra taxes are required. And you can wear all the hats, but even the janitor hat will end up bottlenecking the entrepreneur as the place where everything stops. And so there's this many things to do, and the entrepreneur has this much capacity, and trying to funnel all of that through the entrepreneur is one of those things that prevents the entrepreneur from starting to climb the mountain. Every single one of those alligators that comes out of the swamp is an angry customer or a product that wasn't delivered on time or taxes, or those are the alligators that have to be wrestled. And so so understanding that as an entrepreneur, that it's time to take off the hats. It's time to take off the hats and give them to the people that can do them better than the entrepreneur can. And in my case, having run several of my own businesses and having made every single one of these mistakes myself, I was so proud that I could write a contract and I could balance a balance sheet and I could do all these things. And the truth is, I wasn't helping myself. I wasn't helping myself at all. In fact, I was becoming the bottleneck for everything. And once I opened that up and created multiple streams of workflows and learned to delegate, then that's when the magic started to happen. That's when all of a sudden it went from this teeny little capacity here to multiple funnels that could all be done at the same time. And all of a sudden the things took off. That's when they really started to hit new heights.
This is a 2-part question. The first part of the question is that there are people that have challenge with learning. So what's the best way to learn how to learn? First part of the question. And then the second part is, as an entrepreneur, what are some of the key skills that you have to learn as an entrepreneur?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's one of the best ways to learn how to learn.
Learn how to learn, because I mean, I think that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one.
Well, you want me to give you a quick example? I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
I've taken people, regular people, everyday people, and took them, trained them, taught them how to box. They were able to get into a boxing ring and have an exhibition match and come out, not get hurt, not even get hit too much, because I trained them in a way where they didn't take a lot of punishment. And so to me, that's a skill, that's an art, that's a gift to be able to train someone that way. So same thing as an entrepreneur, like what's the key things they need to learn? And then also, learning how to learn. Because everybody learns different too, and that's the other part.
Yeah. Actually, one of the things that I require of the entrepreneurs that I work with, there's three tenets of the training that I do with them, and one of the things that I require is humility.
What's that?
Humility.
Humility.
Yeah. Without humility, there's a layer of pride. There's a layer of the shiny mask is what I call it. There's this shiny mask that entrepreneurs put on that say, hey, look how great I am. Look at my awesome business. And the truth is that they're an entrepreneur, and that's where they're at. Another one of those tenets is in order to be teachable is to be vulnerable. So humble, vulnerable, and honest. Being honest in what they're doing, where they're at, how they're doing it, because like I talked about at the beginning, in the book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, it talks about the business, but it also talks about the entrepreneur. And a lot of what I do is training the entrepreneur on how to learn, on how to become the leader in their organization. And one of the really big ones, and I would love to dive deep on this subject, is the imposter syndrome that entrepreneurs have. So you asked the two-part question. So this is kind of part two of the question. Is most entrepreneurs, actually, I haven't worked with one yet that hasn't experienced some level of imposter syndrome. And to be very specific on what imposter syndrome looks like, in my case, imposter syndrome, there's 7, you can find these in the book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, but there's 7 different categories of imposter. And there's the genius, the person that has to have all the answers, that knows everything. And there's the superhero that no matter what, no matter how many hours it takes, that person is going to get it done. And there's all these different levels of imposter syndrome. And in my case, if you looked at my business from the outside, my first business, it was a full service media agency. We did everything from radio, TV, logo design, websites, database. I mean, we did everything related to marketing. And if you looked at it from the outside, you would think, holy cow, that guy has really got it together. Look at this. He just won the Entrepreneur of the Year. He's in the 40 under 40. He's got all of these awards. Man, that guy has got it going on. But inside of me, what was actually happening was every time I would get an award, it would actually add to my imposter syndrome. And every time I'd get an award, it was like, oh crap, I already thought I wasn't living up to my expectations. This is where people had me, and I think I'm down here. And now I won an award, so now I have to go up a level, and I'm still down here. And then I got to go up another level, and I'm still down here. And and so the imposter syndrome was thinking, basically it could be summed up in this one sentence: I hope they don't find out who I really am.
Wow.
Because I'm just a scrub. I'm a hack. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue what's going on. I'm pretending to run this business. And Rick, this is the coolest part. This is so cool because entrepreneurship has imposter syndrome built in. Because everybody that starts a business, everybody, doesn't matter who you are, how much experience you've had, you are the very first person to start a business the way you're doing it, in the location you're doing it, at the time you're doing it. So that automatically makes you an imposter. No one can be an expert. Nobody can be an expert in doing what you're doing, the way you're doing it, and when you're doing it, in the market you're doing it in. And once I help entrepreneurs understand, it's okay not to be the superhero, not to be the genius, not to be any of these categories of imposter. Just be you and say, you know what? I actually don't have it figured out. I don't have all the answers. And it's okay, because everybody that would be in my position would also have to figure it out from scratch. And so I'm okay not being the superhero, the superstar. I'm okay with all of that. I'm just going to be me, and that's all right. And it's so amazing what happens to the entrepreneur when they let that go, when they say, you know what? I don't have to be the superhero. I can just be me, and that's enough. It's enough just to be me.
Right. Well, you know, speaking of imposter, you can be an imposter in certain things, but there's one thing where you can't be an imposter, and then there's opinions and there's facts. And the fact is, this is the fact that you did climb Mount Kilimanjaro. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. Tell me about that experience. How did that help you in entrepreneurship? What did you learn from that experience?
Thanks. That was a crazy
Mount
experience.
Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro. That was
Yeah.
an experience of a lifetime. It was so incredible. It's the largest freestanding mountain in the world, and they call it the roof of Africa, and it's at the summit, Uhuru Peak. There's three summits actually. The top summit is at 19,341 feet. So it's just crazy high. And it's funny because I actually wrote the majority of the book before leaving to Kilimanjaro. I came back and I rewrote the entire book. I rewrote the entire book because of the amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so incredible.
Now, is it true that as you're climbing the mountain, you see casualties? Not see them, but there's markers where casualties are there. Is that correct?
So Kilimanjaro doesn't have too many casualties. It does have casualties. People have died. It's not nearly. It doesn't have the mortality rate of Everest or K2 or any of those. So that, which is one of the reasons that I felt a little better doing that one than than Everest. But yeah, our main guide, his name was Abdul, and I asked him on the way up. I'm like, so Abdul, have you ever seen anyone die on the mountain? And he said, Curtis, my friend, I will tell you when we get down. And he wouldn't share that with me on the way up the mountain. He would only share it down because of the psychological effect that it would have. But yeah, when we did get down, he did share, and he has been part of expeditions where people have died. And actually, if it wasn't for Abdul, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Wow.
It was crazy. So the very last part of the climb is the summit day. So you reach base camp. Base camp's at 15,000 feet. And from base camp to the summit is over 4,000 feet straight up. And it's over 4,000 feet, and it's only in a matter of 2.5 miles. So to put that in perspective, that's climbing about not quite, but about 2,000 vertical feet per mile. So I mean, we're talking just straight up the mountain, and that's where everybody gets the hypoxia and the altitude sickness, and it's really it's hard. I've done marathons. I've done half Ironman in Kona, Hawaii. I've done several different strenuous events, and I have nothing in my life that compares to the difficulty of Kilimanjaro, especially that last day, the summit day. It was harder than anything I can even describe. We would literally take a step and then breathe.
Wow.
Take a step and breathe. And breathe. And the guides had a saying every day, every time we were in motion, they'd say pole pole to the top, pole pole to the top, and that means slowly, slowly to the top. And it's kind of like what you said earlier. There's facts, and then there's interpretation. And the fact is that all of us that start businesses are entrepreneurs, and the fact is that we start making our way up the mountain, and it doesn't matter where we're at on the mountain. The fact that we're on the mountain, that's something to celebrate. That's something that's amazing, that we've taken that leap, that we've made it past the alligators, that we're on the mountain, we're climbing this summit. And for our expedition, as we got closer and closer, it got harder and harder. And I actually didn't get any hypoxia till the very top. And it's kind of funny because I sabotaged myself. They said when you get to the top, spend as little time as possible. Take your pictures and get back down. And as you know, I'm a very very ambitious person. So I said, okay, I'm going to spend as little time at the top as possible, which meant I was running around at the top trying to take pictures of everything, and which was the wrong thing to do. If you climb Kilimanjaro, do not run around on the summit. It's a bad idea. But as I was running around getting all the pictures and videos, there's a giant iceberg at the top and all this cool, crazy stuff. And the hypoxia, or the altitude sickness, it hit me like a brick wall. It literally felt like a brick wall had just crushed into my chest, and it just went boom, and I just and I couldn't breathe, and I was just entirely out of breath. I was gasping for air, and we walked back down to base camp, which was another 2.5 miles. Of now we're doing this, before we were doing this, now we're doing this. The hardest 2.5 miles I've ever traveled in my life. It was excruciating. And we get back down to base camp, and Abdul, he says, all right, we're going to sleep for an hour and then we're going to go. And so I crawl into my bunk, and the entire hour I'm coughing, I'm shaking, I'm coughing so badly that I'm coughing up blood.
Wow.
It was just a horrible, horrible experience. And after the hour, Abdul comes in and he says, all right, everybody, let's get up and let's make it down to the next camp. And I said, please, just one more hour, as I'm coughing and gasping. I'm like, one more hour. And, and, in a normal situation, if you're sick, what do? You go to bed, you sleep, and the more you sleep, the better you get, right? The happier you are, and you take some NyQuil and some Tylenol, and that's what you do. But when you're in such a toxic environment where there is no air to breathe, I actually had to get out of that environment to get better. And so when Abdul saw me, and I'm just pleading for one more hour, he looked at me with this deadpan stare, and he said, no, we leave now.
Wow.
And I literally fell out of bed. I found a way to put some clothes on, changed from my, my sweat-drenched clothes into some other clothes, and we walked down another 6 miles to the next camp. And I immediately just crashed into my bed, just died until the next morning. And when I woke up the next morning, Abdul was right there. he was like right there. And I'm like, oh, hey, Abdul. And he said, oh, I'm so happy to see you, my friend. And I said, well, what do you mean? Why? And he said, if we would have stayed, you would have died.
Wow.
And it struck me so hard. It struck me so hard, Rick, because the truth is I would have died. If I would have stayed in an environment where there was no air, where it was this toxic environment, I would have died. And if it wasn't for a great guide and mentor, then I might still be on the mountain. And so, tremendous lesson. One of the things they say is that for Kilimanjaro, you cannot go up without coming down changed. And every person that goes up comes down a different person.
Wow. This is a secret between you and I. I'm going to take my engineer, Doug Fraser, on this mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro. He doesn't know it yet. I'm taking him on that mountain. What? Doug Fraser, my engineer.
Okay. So, can I come with you? Let's all go together.
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but he doesn't know it yet. He doesn't know he's going on the mountain yet.
Okay. When does he think he'll find out?
What's that?
When do you think he'll find out?
He's going to find out soon. He's recording this show, so he'll find out real soon.
So when you do, make sure you get a hold of Ekanella Expeditions. They're the best. Kylie Chen. I'll connect you with Kylie Chen. She's amazing.
Not going to be able to do it.
Did you hear that?
Oh, Doug, you can do this, man. You can do it.
Not going to be able to do it. Thank you very much.
Hey, listen, don't worry about it, man. I got him.
Just for the record.
We'll get you to the top.
No, that was a scary story when you was telling that. That was wow.
Yeah. Hey, Curtis, let me have your website.
Yeah, it's www.entrepreneursparadox.com.
Now, I like the way you speak. For some reason, I think you'd be a great teacher. Anytime you teach any classes, entrepreneurial classes, would you keep me posted and let me know so I could share with other people? Because I think that I think you'd be a very effective teacher as an entrepreneur's teacher. That's what I think from what I'm speaking to you now.
Thanks.
So would you keep me posted?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any classes that you might be leading?
Absolutely, I would love to. Yeah,
even if it's on the mountain of Mount Kilimanjaro, if you're teaching an entrepreneur class going up the mountain, let me know about that one too.
You know, it's funny.
Go ahead.
That because part of my top level training is actually going to be on a mountain. And
it's going to be what?
On a mountain. So the
wow.
We're going to actually climb some mountains and relate it back to business. So
now you're in Salt Lake City, right?
We are. Yep. Just
there are a lot of mountains there.
Lots of mountains. Some really good ones.
There you go. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And
well, Curtis, I want to thank you. Anything that you want to share before we leave today?
Yeah. One thing I'd love
last thoughts?
One thing I'd love to share is with the listeners, anybody that wants to pick up the book, on The Entrepreneur's Paradox, if you go to theentrepreneursParadox.com/WHCR, then what we'll do is we will actually donate to one of 3 charities. So one is called the Unique Foundation, which helps women survivors of sexual abuse. Another is called the Bridle Up Hope Foundation, founded actually by Sean Covey, Stephen Covey's son, which helps young women develop leadership skills through equestrian training. And the final is the Red Fred Project, which is a project where people with a terminal illness get to write a book and have authors that help them. So it's children that get to write their own book, which is a really unique foundation. So if anybody purchases the book through the WHCR link, again, it's www.entrepreneursParadox.com/WHCR. Before the new year, then we'll donate to one of those 3 charities.
Okay. So Curtis J.MORLEY, this is the final question. Okay. Are you ready for the final question?
I'm ready for the final question. Throw it at me.
Why? And I thought about this question when you talked about the foundation that you're doing. Why are you here?
I am so glad you asked that question. You know, I really believe I'm here on this planet to help entrepreneurs, not just their businesses, but to help them to raise themselves to a new level. to help themselves become someone that they love to be.
Wow. Wow, I want to thank you, Curtis. I want to thank you, Curtis J. Morley. Thank you for being here, the Entrepreneur's Paradox. And keep me posted on your classes that you'll be giving, especially the online classes.
Yeah.
And I'll share with my audience.
That
So
sounds
thank you, Curtis. I really enjoyed speaking with you and learned a lot too.
Rick.
All right, you got to do it again.
I'd love it. Let's do it again.
All right.
Okay.
All right, talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You're a human being. And the power to use your vote and to use even those few cents you get from welfare to spend them only where you want to spend them. A young slave boy stood one day before the greatest ruler of his day. And God said to Moses, "What's in your hand?" And Moses said, "Lord, only I've got a stick, that's all." He said, "Well, let me use what's in your hand." And God used that slave boy with a stick in his hand to divide the Red Seas, march through a wilderness, bring water out of rocks, manna from heaven, and bring his people to Freedom Land. What's in your hand? What's in your hand? George Washington Carver, who was so frail that he was traded for a broken-down horse as a slave boy. And George Washington Carver, sitting in the science laboratory at Tuskegee, told me, he said, "Dr. Powell," he said, "I just go out in the fields each morning at 5 o'clock, and I let God guide me. And I bring back these little things and work them over my laboratory." And that man did more to revolutionize the agricultural science of peanuts and of cotton and sweet potato than any other human being in the field of agricultural science. What's in your hand? Just let God use you, that's all. What's in your hand? I've got a string in my hand, that's all, and I'm flying a kite. And way up in the heavens, lightning strikes it. And I, Benjamin Franklin, discover for the first time the possibilities of electricity with a string in my hand. What's in your hand? Little hunchback sitting in a Roman jail? I haven't got anything in my hand but an old quill pen, but God says, "Write what I tell you to write." Paul wrote, "I have run my race with patience. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Henceforth is laid up in me a What's in your hand, little boy? All I've got is a slingshot. And the enemies of my people are great and big and more numerous than we are. Well, little David, go down to the brook and pick out a few stones and come on back. And close your eyes if you want to and pull back that slingshot and let it go. And David killed the biggest enemy, the leader of the giants, against his people, and his people became free, just letting God guide a stone in his hand. And a few years passed, and David is a king. And God says, "What's in your hand?" He said, "I've got a harp in my hand." He said, "Well, David, play on your harp." And he played, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Leadeth me beside still waters. Yea, though I walk through the valley and the shadow of death, I'll